Before we begin, this episode contains mentions of mental health, depression, self-harm, and suicide. Viewer discretion is advised. And we're live.
Oh. Sweet. A couple of technical difficulties before the start. There's only two working mics now. Finlay, can you hear yourself in the headphones?
I can, yeah. That's
Yeah.
a bit of a weird
It
feeling.
feels nice, doesn't it?
Yeah, very
The
sweet.
other one works as well. These ones work as well.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Right, we can share the microphone. Hi, guys. It's me, Callum Mayer, with my co-host, Tom.
Good evening, everybody. Hope we're all doing well.
Oh, you
We're having a
sound so
fantastic night.
You sound so nice. You sound so crisp in that. Oh, my God. And we have Finlay Whitton here.
Hi guys, how's it going?
We just sort of want to have like a chill conversation with you, because, I mean, usually I come in here with like tons of notes and like a whole sort of script, and I did want to do that.
Are we going noteless?
I want to go noteless. I just want to sort of, because I do, like I was saying, off air, I was sort of saying like I tend to overthink what I'm saying when I have the questions, and I tend to like not listen to what the other person is saying. And just like sort of like, oh, when can I ask this next question? And then after the whole thing, I'm like, I don't remember a single thing that we talked about. So I'm sort of going off script today to see if it, I don't know, improves the quality of the conversation, I guess. You know. So Finlay, how are you doing? How are you today? How are you feeling?
I'm alright. It's been a busy day. It hasn't been a particularly productive day, but I feel like that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I mean, you can talk to us about your week. How's your week been? How have you been in general?
How have I been in general?
Give us a little rundown.
I mean, it's been busy, right? We're just getting up to midterms. Everyone's getting finally into the academic swing of things, I feel.
Everyone's getting like past the bullshit of, oh, like, uni is like really fun.
That's right. That's right. People, aside from the freshers, people are realizing now that shit, like we're at uni again. Like this is summer.
for sure.
But it's been okay. It's been tricky. It's been stressful, obviously. It's been a bit of a low week for me. But that's part of the ebbs and flows of life.
Of course. Would you like to sort of like talk a bit more about that then?
So I think it's kind of natural, right? In my opinion, not to get too deep too soon, but life kind of, it comes in waves a little bit at you. It doesn't come. It's not linear. You're not always in a certain mood, and even if you look at every day, you're not always going to be a 7 out of 10 every single day. Some days you're going to be a 9. Some days you're going to be a 6, 5, 4, whatever. And most people kind of, I like to hope, would average around 6, 7, 8 sort of vibe. But for me personally, I get 2-week lows, 4-week highs, 2-week lows, 4-week highs. And it kind of levels out so that once, twice a semester, I just have a couple of low weeks. And what happens then? Well, fall behind on my academics, don't contact my friends. And it's just one of those things that happens.
How long has that sort of been happening for you? Because I feel like for me, like definitely high school, like sort of later years of high school, I sort of had the sort of similar thing. But yeah, what about yourself?
Tricky to say. Like, in my school, I kind of went to I went to a school where that just wasn't discussed. Like mental health, not like a thing. It was like, just like lads culture. Like this is hilarious. Like just telling like really inappropriate jokes all the time, not asking each other how we were. So in school, I probably had things like that, but wouldn't have been able to even clock that was happening.
For sure.
And I really only noticed it a couple of years ago, so just at the start of uni, for me. And I think since I've become much more aware of it, I'm much better at saying, like, oh shit, like, okay, this is just that week.
Yeah.
Like, that's why this is that feeling.
Yeah, no.
That's why I'm behind on work.
I really get that, actually. I think sort of like my mental development from when I was in high school to now has changed drastically. And I think it's because of the people that I'm around.
You think so?
I think in high school, I also think high school is a very like oppressive culture sometimes. Yeah. People don't really want to. People are very scared of being themselves in high school, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree.
Like it's a very like, it's great. Like you can make some great friends, but it's a very judgmental culture there.
Yeah.
In high school.
And why do you feel that's different in uni?
I think I think people, for one, I don't think you come here and like people don't know who you were before, so you get like a fresh start, which is a huge confidence booster.
That's a big deal.
You know, I'm glad that people didn't know who I was in high school. You know,
Me too.
so because you get a fresh start, you get to sort of like reevaluate, like, okay, who am I? Like, what are the pieces from my high school experience I want to take with me, and what are the pieces that, you know, let's do some work on.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like it's
yeah.
tricky though, because I also think that we tend to be the same kind of person that we were in school. Like, I think you'll find a lot of the same traits flowing through. So I don't necessarily feel like you're a different person now. You're maybe just a more refined version of the person that you were.
Do you not find that leaving high school, and I've had my very fair share of battles of mental health, that you leaving, and I don't know how big you guys' high schools were, but my school itself was 3-year-olds to 18-year-olds, about 700 people, and then high school itself was 180 people.
Right, quite small.
So there was sort of like that safety net, and everyone knew every teacher, everyone knew everything.
Yeah.
Like, I came to uni first year, well, COVID, so kind of like just not really, not really any mental health issues, a bit boring. And second year, I kind of got to know people, and my struggles restarted last year, even though I knew a lot of people. I don't like it's one of those things where I felt like it never happened in high school. Well, I mean, I had like once like a bad week, because I had that safety net, and even though I've got all my friends here, it doesn't feel like that kind of like same thing every day.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. At high school, it's definitely different, but you also, I don't think anyone's as aware. Also, people's brains like aren't as developed, I guess. So maybe you don't have the facilities to feel like that keen sadness, that keen emptiness that you actually can feel now. I don't know if there's anything to that.
Do you think when you look back on like your high school experience, there is like from who you are now, like when you look back onto your high school experience, do you see certain like trends or traits that you think are, I would say, like toxic or unproductive within sort of like lads culture?
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at that in two ways. First of all, within myself, absolutely, and within the culture I was in also. Within myself, I was kind of like this meek, mild, like, would just kind of wanted to fit in, would do whatever. If people were rude, I'd be like, just turn the other cheek. It's okay, like, I'll be the bigger person, which is good in some situations, but it meant that I got walked all over in school. And that's something that I've intentionally tried not to do at uni. And I'm still guilty of it sometimes, it's just how I am. But that's something that I've tried to implement. But in school as well, the culture was crazy. Really different, like, private school, it just, like, in my opinion, so toxic. Didn't feel it at the time, but just super toxic. Lots of, like, gay jokes, jokes about women, jokes about just a whole load of things that I would not joke about now. People in my year felt comfortable joking about all the time.
Yeah.
And it was under the guise of like, oh, like, that's so funny, like, that's hilarious. And people were just saying the most outrageous things that they could in order to gain, like, attention, laughter. And it wasn't a competition of, like, who's the funniest, who's the smartest, who's the hardest working, who's the most talented. It was like, who can say the most outrageous thing? And that was viewed as like, oh, like, he's the bravest, he can say the most fucked up thing. Like, that's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I very much agree. And I don't know if you're still in contact with people from your high school,
Not
but
so much.
I've got a group of friends from there, and we've got like a chat that we kind of catch up with and kind of send each other memes to, and you can kind of tell who's grown up and who hasn't.
Yeah.
And it's very much like in the type of like, I mean, again, it's like, for example, what type of meme they'll send. It'll be something incredibly, and I mean, I do comedy. I like dark humor.
Yeah, of course.
But it's the difference between dark humor for the sake of like an actual good joke
Yeah.
at the end of it,
Yeah.
and just being a piece of shit.
Agreed.
And you kind of see that comparison of if this was 6 years ago, everyone would be liking the meme. It's so
Exactly.
funny. Whereas now it's actually like one other person, and
Yeah.
everyone ignores them.
Yeah, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
What are we playing at?
For sure. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to sort of discuss, like, what we're talking about, this very like oppressive nature of high school, and how it sort of encourages certain behaviours, especially like also because it's so oppressive, like the effects that can have on men's mental health and the way you feel like you can express yourself, and also sort of like how that affects the women around us, like the women in our lives, is a very important thing. I'd like to hear your 2 cents on.
Yeah, totally. I think it's interesting. I mean, certainly in my high school, and not something I feel at all anymore, there was this like massive fear of being like perceived as gay or like feminine or like emotional, and that's just crazy. Like, what are we talking about? And if you've got boys that are scared to show their emotions, how on earth are they supposed to have honest, open communications with each other? And then specifically, how on earth are they supposed to respect people that are seen in society as more emotional, as more feminine than women? Right? So if boys are so scared of being open like that, what are they going to think of the people that they perceive as more open anyway?
For sure.
And so it creates this relationship where you, at the same time, want to appear macho and brave and strong, but also crave like an intimate connection with someone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It's a crazy like duality there. But I mean, for me, I don't know how we go around sort of like breaking the system, because if I look at my family, I feel like there's certain traits that my family members have.
Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of embody that, and I don't know the first thing to do about how to like start that conversation, how to break down these sort of barriers. To sort of like talk about sort of being like vulnerable and open with especially with other men in my life, because I think I've noticed this. I was reading a book recently that me and Finlay both read. I don't know the author. Do you know the author?
Peggy Ornstein.
Yeah, Peggy Ornstein, and it's called Boys and Sex. Yep. And there's a really interesting part where it sort of talks about how we as men lean on women for emotional labor, which I found very interesting, and sort of like reflected on my own life and went, yeah, for sure. But like, why is that? Like, why can't we? Why do I feel like I can't have these conversations with like my male friends?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, in school it was all the boys had this persona, and then any ones that had girlfriends their girlfriend was their best friend. And why was that? Because that was the only one they had the emotional connection with.
You say high school, but even like in my own situations, there's people that I'm incredibly close with.
Yeah, I agree.
That even like in university, guys that I was mentioning I remember last year, I was mentioning kind of like my struggles to him. He's like, oh mate, don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And obviously at the time kind of felt a little hurt, but kind of this is before I went into therapy, which I started in August. But it was hearing that and being like, oh, okay, I guess I won't.
Yeah,
and I was talking about it
shames you.
And then I kind of started talking about it to a lot of my friends, and then realized that like it kind of like was before I kind of realized I needed to see a professional, because it was just like I would just use my friends because like I don't go to therapy.
Yeah.
Because I did it like for example, I did as a kid, like very little. It was like something that was bothering me. My parents were like, "You need a psychologist." I didn't actually at the time, but that made me not like psychologists, so I didn't want to like ever go back. But like it's one of those things where like I feel like I was talking to a lot of my girlfriends.
Yeah.
Not friends that are women. I don't date. Women scare me. But I would talk to them about my issues, whereas like a lot of my guy friends would be like, oh no mate, don't talk to me about that, mate. We're here to have a good time.
Shut it down really quickly. Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm kind of the same now. Like, obviously we're having this conversation, and
there's no way we would have had this conversation like 4 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no,
I would have just laughed.
Exactly. But even with my friends at uni, like, I wouldn't sit down and have this conversation like, oh, like, let's look at men's mental health and how your journey through high school has impacted you. It'd be a chat that would take a long time to really warm up to. And obviously in this environment it's great because we've decided that we want to talk about this area, so it makes it easier to talk about.
Are you glad that you're able to sort of like diagnose why you feel sad now? Like, you were sort of talking about how you're able to be like, okay, yes, I'm sad these days and I understand why. Has that brought a sense of like comfort or like routine into your life that you appreciate?
It's tricky. It's a double-edged sword because it's helpful knowing like, oh shit, like, okay, I'm sad and this might be why. I can kind of link it back to whatever. But also sometimes you can't fix the things that are making you sad. And in some ways it's better not to know, because then at least you can kind of pretend it's not happening. Whereas if you know about it and can't fix it, that's frustrating.
But in that sense, if you're leaving it in, you're bottling it up.
Yeah.
And that can then break out into serious, like
I think that's right.
like a serious breakout. It's a bit like I compare it a bit to acne, because I've had acne for probably the last 10 years. It's you can't control your acne in the sense you can't just get rid of it.
Yeah.
But you can do a few things to sort of alleviate it. It's how you eat. It's obviously washing your face. If you have creams, put on creams. It's also how you eat, your diet. It's doing exercise. Those are things that kind of keep it at bay. But if you just say, "Oh, I can't do anything to do with this acne," and you don't touch, you leave it, it just will, at some point it will break out and it'll be tough to fix.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with mental health.
For
I've
real.
found.
Yeah. A bit of a story time. I dated this girl a couple of years ago now, before the current girl I'm seeing. And we were dating for a really long time, kind of high school sweethearts. 15 when we started seeing each other. She was my first kiss, my first sexual experience, first girlfriend. Got through first year of uni long distance. But the whole time I was like kind of, something isn't right. Like, I don't know what it is, I can't put my finger on it, but this isn't how this should be. And so I held it in. And then at some point I was like, shit, like, we need to break up. Like, I'm not in love. Like, we're not in love with each other. And then I held it in for another 6 months. And then just a huge, massive blow up, because for 6 months, a year, I'd been holding in this massive feeling of guilt, regret, like I was doing something wrong and sneaky, even though I wasn't necessarily. And then in that moment, everything just got so much worse because I hadn't said something as soon as I felt it. And there's a difference between expressing your feelings and trauma dumping or whatever. But it's so important to actually discuss these things, I think.
Do you think there's a reason why you kept it in?
Yeah, I'm a person that doesn't like upsetting people. Don't like letting people down. I don't want to hurt people. And I thought that by breaking up with her, saying, "Oh, actually, we're not in love," that was going to hurt her. But long term, obviously, realizing that your boyfriend at the time hadn't been in love with you for 6 months is a lot more hurtful than
For sure.
your boyfriend just breaking up with you.
Yeah.
And so then at that point, I was like, oh my goodness, that's just so unhealthy that I wasn't able to say this, because I was such a people pleaser that I actually hurt the person that at the time I cared about one of the most in the world, even if just as a friend.
Yeah. How do you think, I guess, these ideas of toxic masculinity hinder men's ability to communicate properly? I guess our emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of men have much more emotional intelligence than they feel comfortable letting on. I think that's
for sure.
That's a big part.
For sure.
Because I think toxic masculinity is a very interesting one, because I don't think masculinity in and of itself is a toxic thing at all.
Yeah. I was gonna say how would you? Because I don't want to just throw out buzzwords. I want you to sort of, I guess, define what your opinion, what's your definition of toxic masculinity?
What's masculinity? What's toxic masculinity?
Yeah, and how do they differentiate?
Yeah, good question. I mean, first of all, they're both social constructs, right? Masculinity, masculine, is not it's not inherently to do with being male. Of course, you've got in hunter-gatherer times, hunters are the strong, fast providers or whatever, and women are the gatherers looking after the children. But I don't think that that's relevant anymore. I think we've evolved past that. And I think that whilst it's something that in eons ago would have defined us as a people, you're the male and you're the female, now we've got these constructs of man and woman. And I think that's where masculinity and femininity come to play much more. So it's a made up thing, I think. Although that's a really interesting debate, because I think every man, maybe that's not fair to say, everyone who identifies as a man has a kind of drive, a more masculine drive, and I think, I can't speak for women, but I think they tend to have a more feminine drive.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, if we're looking at masculinity, take aside the fact that it's a social construct, it means It means being able to look after people when they need you to. It means being able to do the right thing. But that's the same with femininity.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah.
It's if I can have my
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, just can't hear me. It's similar in a way to very early on. I know this is used constantly as an example for toxic masculinity, but it's you're at the playground, right? A girl falls, right? Hurts herself. Hey, how you doing? Oh, okay. Right, we're gonna get you some help. Okay, even if she's crying, say, hey, we're gonna get you some help. We fell, right? I don't know about you guys. I fell. It's Tom. Why are you crying? Boys don't cry. And I cried, like, I would say for the most minor thing, from the age of 2 to the age of, I want to say 12 or 13. Was I an overly sensitive guy? In a way, yes. In a sense of, like, when I was 12, when I was 12, there's a notorious story at school. My friends took fun of me for, is that I asked to take a penalty, and my friends didn't at lunch. Like football, didn't let me, so I cried and went to principal. Now, it's obviously a bit different, but it was kind of like a lot of it was pent up from just like, I was sort of like half bullied, but like also from that like teased since I was a kid. And teasing is like, okay, but they were like, because of the fact that I was also bullied and the kind of teasing went into bullying because I couldn't recognize it.
Of course it does.
I didn't really know how to control it. So, like, a lot of guys would kind of just, like, bottle it in and being like, oh, boys don't cry. I don't cry. I'm a boy. Whereas that never really worked for me, so I just kept on crying, and it was always, like, someone's always crying. It's like a girl. It's kind of like a little girl. It's kind of like a little baby. When it was things that I did need to cry for, like, people wouldn't listen. Because I feel like, I was being overwhelmingly emotional. I don't know what you're trying to show me here.
Do you want to go for a little break?
We can, yeah. But yeah, it was I feel like that's like from a young age with us.
It's ingrained, right?
Yeah, like one of my friends, and I love him to death. He knows I'm in therapy. I said to him, I was like, you're talking to me about something. I was like, oh, you should probably try out therapy, even if it's like one session, see how it goes. And he said to me, no, mate, I go to the gym. I kind of like half laughed, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's good to exercising. Yeah. Like, I need to go back to the gym. It's been a month. Yeah. And I was consistently doing it like in the summer and everything. It was like, no, mate, like, no, genuinely, like I go, I lift weights, I feel better. Don't need that.
Yeah, I mean, that's not how it works. That's like a short-term release of endorphins from physical exertion. Like, that's not a sustainable thing.
Exactly.
It's good to get into good, healthy habits, and, like, fitness has a direct correlation with mental health, of course. But, like, actually analyzing and combating the deep-seated trauma / fears, issues that we have is the only way sustainably to improve our mental health.
Right. And exactly. And I think after the song break, I think we talk about more like the kind of benefits of talking out and talking to others.
All right. We'll see you after the break.
Okay. Right.
I was going to say, right, I definitely feel like you're the kind of guy that get an ear piercing.
Me?
Yeah, for sure.
I was thinking about it. I really wanted like a cross one, like a Christian cross one.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
But then I was like, that's not appropriate.
Mad basic though, right?
Yeah.
What you said?
So, for the audience, that was Virtual Insanity by Jamiroquai, and that was
song.
Finley's request of a song. Very good song. Before we get back into the discussion, I'm going to just take a 2-second break to give a trigger warning for the podcast. I'll be on Spotify and Apple Music, given the themes that we are discussing. So I'll just go into that now. Okay. Before we begin, this episode contains mentions of mental health, depression, self-harm, and suicide. Viewer discretion is advised. There we go. And that's for the podcast.
That was cool as fuck.
That was pretty good.
That was cool as fuck.
It was a beautiful voice.
That was such a good podcast voice.
Yeah, so anyway, earring.
Yeah, and then my friend Lydia, shout out Lydia, we had this little bet on. She was like, if I do this, will you get an earring? And I was like, okay, like class. Like, I've wanted an earring for a while. And then I texted my girlfriend Soph, and she was like, you're not getting an earring. And I was like,
really?
Okay, well, I'm not getting an earring then. That's sorted. No earring for Finlay. Tough. You have earrings?
I got one.
When did you get that?
I got it during summer.
Yeah.
And
how did I not notice that?
I don't know.
Crazy.
what I'm saying, yeah.
Were you expecting a compliment?
I was expecting a compliment. I'm very, very upset I didn't get one. I got it during summer. It was funny because I was talking to my aunt. My aunt said, "You know, you're the kind of person that would have a piercing back."
Yeah.
I was like, "Huh." So like the thought just festered, right?
Yeah.
And then like the day after, I was in London. I was in Camden Town. And it's a place where there's just like a bunch of tattoo shops, piercing shops. And I was with my cousin, and I said, "Guess what Aunt said to me yesterday?" And I was like, "Da-da-da," and she's like, "You know where we are right now? Like, what do you reckon?" I was like, "Fuck it, let's do it." So I just got it. It was so sore, but I went through it. But now I'm thinking of other piercings I want. Like I would love a nose piercing.
Little nose piercing.
I'd love to get the other ear done, and even maybe like a hoop up top as well.
Yeah.
I definitely
cartilage one.
Yeah, I reckon. I just stuff.
I think they're cool. For me, it's got to be. I really want tattoos. Really want tattoos. I wouldn't want visible ones initially. I'd want like ones that, whatever, like you take off your top and you're like, damn, like that's tattoos.
Yeah, for sure.
Like he's got tattoos on. I feel like that's kind of cool.
Like a chest tattoo?
I want to wait until like I get absolutely ripped to get my tattoos.
I know. That's what I was saying, but I don't think I'll ever be ripped enough in my own
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, me too.
I mean, I almost got a chest tattoo, and I'm not even ripped. I just kind of like looked online, being like, I feel like it won't like it doesn't apparently muscle unless you're going like unless you're like roided to shit or like going from like when I say like a lean body type to the opposite. Apparently, it doesn't really affect like the tattoo. The distortion isn't that bad.
Yeah.
So I mean, with piercings, one of the reasons I would like to get a tattoo, I like to get a few tattoos, and I haven't done it yet. But piercings to me, I'm terrified of needles. Like it scares the shit out of me. That's why I don't think I'd ever get a piercing.
Well, tattoos as well then, though.
Yeah, but I feel like it's a different needle though. Like a piercing goes through your skin.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas
Still with tattoos, like
no, it does go through your skin, but I feel like to a different amount. And then the piercing is always in your ear.
Yeah.
It's always in your ear or in your nose or
For
wherever
real.
you're having it.
tattoos always there as well. You know, I feel like
but the needles aren't.
yeah. Well, I feel like when you're getting your tattoo done, the noise of the tattoo gun will freak you the fuck out. Like, especially if you're scared of needles. Needles with a noise?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
No, it's not. To me, it's the feeling of a needle. It's the puncturing.
You feel that with a tattoo as well.
I know.
It's like nippy.
Apparently, it's a different feeling though to like an actual.
Yeah,
needle.
like not going through.
Yeah. Well, the only way is to find out, right?
Let me talk tattoos. Come get them with us.
Anyway, so I really wanted to talk about. I mean, before the break, we were talking about masculinity. We couldn't really come to a decent definition because it's such a broad topic. And to be fair, I don't think either of us are probably qualified to talk about it in depth. But I guess. Well, I mean, for me, I'd say masculinity encompasses like assertiveness, decisiveness, a care for one's family, an emotional rock.
That's an interesting one.
And a sense of the ability to give a sense of security to the people around you. Yeah, that's how.
The thing that I see with all of these is that you kind of desire those. Like, if you think about your ideal partner, right? And whether that's a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. But you desire that in a partner as well. Yeah. So you desire an emotional rock, someone to lean on. You desire someone who can be assertive, but sometimes chooses not to. You desire someone who. What was the last thing you said?
What did I say? I just sort of been like, is there for like support for their family.
But that reminds me of my mum, more than my dad.
Do you reckon? I'm just talking. Maybe I'm just like envisioning it as sort of like the figurehead of a family, like the one that sort of
a nuclear family
dictates, keeps. Oh, yeah, it's very like very stereotypical, I reckon.
But I feel strong femininity and strong masculinity have all the same traits.
Yeah.
That's why it's so difficult to define, because we're looking at forms in philosophy at the moment, and that's like, okay, so you've obviously got your triangles, and there's one thing that makes all these things a triangle, and of course you've got these definitions like 3 sides, however many degrees or whatever. But for example, all these cats, they're all cats. What is the one thing that makes them all cats? Is it pointy ears? No, foxes have those. Is it furry coat? No, dogs have those. 4 legs? No, horses have those. What is it that makes it a cat? And so the point is that what is the thing that defines masculinity? And it's so difficult to put a finger on. And that's why it's because it's a socially constructed idea. It's not inherent. It's not intrinsic.
So if we can't define what masculinity is, right, or we find it difficult, how do we define toxic masculinity? What is that then?
Yeah.
Is that like an offspring of is that masculinity taken to its extremes? Is that assertiveness, decisiveness, all these attributes that we've talked about?
Yeah.
Is it them taken to the extreme?
Yeah, well, it's a good point. I'd like to clarify first of all that I think all those things you mentioned that you associate with masculinity are good things. I think those are good things to be. I think it's good to be assertive, decisive, an emotional rock, someone that people look to when they need help. I think those are all brilliant. And I don't necessarily think that toxic masculinity is just those things, but times it by 10. I mean, if someone's too assertive, that's weird, but it's not necessarily, you wouldn't say necessarily like, that's masculinity. You just say that's a bit weird.
Do you think it's like a combination of all of these, like a sort of
Yeah.
melting pot, and when it gets to
think
sort
it's
of
like-
a boiling point? Like,
You look at society's ideas of masculinity, and then you see how some people are trying to enforce those, and they do it in ways which subjugates other people, and makes other people less empowered. I think toxic masculinity disempowers people. True masculinity empowers other people to be good. I think that's maybe a key difference for me, and I don't think that's necessarily something that is distinct to masculinity. I think it's the same thing with femininity, but I think toxic masculinity disempowers people. It makes people feel like they're less.
And I think, and we've had discussions on this in the past, and I think the rise in such poor mental health among men, which has been present for a long time, but I think there's been such a rise in poor mental health among men. You mentioned the kind of like good masculinity and good values masculinity versus toxic masculinity. And that's why I feel that men like Andrew Tate have absolutely just hurt men.
Yeah, absolutely.
And while they're trying, the idea of helping young men, helping men who are clearly trying to overcome struggles of loneliness and other aspects that hurt their mental health,
Yeah.
men like Andrew Tate, and there's definitely a lot of others, and Jordan Peterson as well, who just kind of like it's especially I find Tate, it creates a toxic man out of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I personally fear for I think in our generation, when I say our generation, I think our people, like, I'd say within our year, like 2021, maybe slightly older, I think we're not necessarily immune to it, but most of us are developmentally enough to ignore it or to pass it off as what it is, which is just completely toxic. Whereas I worry for those who I would say are 15, 16, sort of like going through the latest stage of puberty.
So impressionable.
Yeah, and going into school, going into university. I'm worried for them and how they're going to turn out.
yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I think it's such a slippery slope. Some of the things that we can see in the media, especially with characters like that. I mean, I'll be completely honest. Like, when I was younger, I was so impressionable, and you know, because it's someone with that kind of iconography. You know, he's muscular. He's got the girls. He's got the money. You kind of want to look up to him, and you want to take in what he's saying.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you're that age, when you're down, when you're confused, when you don't really know how to fit into your role as a man, or like you don't know what you're doing when you're that young, you can be so impressionable and so easily swayed by the things that you're hearing from these people, you know. And I think it's definitely pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Andrew Tate, for example. I mean, Jordan Peterson's another example, which we can touch on after. But aside from his big, bald, ugly head, everything that he does is like a symbol of status. He's got muscles because he works out in the gym. He's like a professional kickboxer. He knows how to make money and get girls. And so these are all things that, like, as a man, you think, okay, like, that's what I like.
That's what makes
I
me a
want.
man.
That's what I want. That's
yeah.
what makes me a man.
Those are the signs of masculinity.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the problem is, like, anyone can have those things. Anyone can go to the gym. No, anyone can make loads of money, but people can make money and they don't have to be like that. But he's loud and he's saying controversial things and he's saying things that, what's ironic is that he's actually talking to men. And he's actually giving men an emotional outlet. He's saying, if you want to
So
be
true,
like
yeah.
this, then you need to do these things. You need to develop yourself. You need to become like this. And that can be such a force for good, obviously.
So what you're saying is you think he's actually capitalizing on the fact that men have a limited emotional outlet.
Yeah, and that's right. I also think that he's, as much as I don't respect anything he does or says, I think he's probably a pretty smart guy. Like, I think he knows what he's doing. I think he's realized that there's a niche in the market for
sure.
impressionable young men that want to buy his course and look and be like him, saying, okay, these guys don't know how, they've got no one's guiding them through life. I'm going to be that person for them. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to make a load of money whilst I'm doing it.
I think he capitalizes on the want for, I'm not going to say a father figure, but like
like a guiding figure
for someone that people want to be, but it's just a bit extreme.
Yeah.
I reckon.
I feel like kind of a consequence of poor mental health among men and sort of like other and toxic masculinity has led to a lot of insecure men.
Absolutely.
Which I think like men like Tate. I don't think Tate is secure
No.
in himself, and a lot of other men. And I think this is obviously not necessarily linked to mental health itself, but that shows that insecurity is. It's become a bit of a meme now, but have you ever heard of Bradley Martin?
Yeah.
The bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of the meme of like he will have a professional, like a UFC fighter or other fighter on his show, and he'll say, could you take me in a street fight? And I go, yeah, I could. He goes, no, but I'm 260 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm 260. Like, no, you can't. Like, I'm 260. I'm big. I work out. I'm a bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. I get on top of you. You're flattened. And you see all these other fighters kind of like laugh him off. There's a guy called Sean O'Malley, the bantamweight champion. So he weighs in about 135 pounds.
60 kilograms.
Yeah, so 60 kilograms as opposed to like way over 100.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you see his answer. He goes, well, no, after I've trained this pretty much all my life. I've trained with big guys. It's yeah, you're big. You look good, man. But like, just saying, I know what I can do. And it's that sort of like, it's, and I mean, it's not necessarily me saying Sean O'Malley can be an absolute idiot, but it's that sort of like that security that I feel like a lot of men need to have of being secure within themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me a long time. I mean, people that know me, people who've never seen me, I'm a very tall, lanky, skinny guy, and people think, oh, you're tall, you're 6'5", good for you. But like it took me years to get used to like, because I'm not as skinny as I used to be, but I was beanpole. I was. Not one bit of muscle on my bones, and I mean, not that much now. But like, I'm completely secure in who I am. Like, I want to go to a gym to be healthy, to feel good, to kind of lift heavier weights, just because I know that's just better for me.
Yeah.
But it took me for years to I want to go to the gym because I want to be big, because I should be big. I shouldn't be this scrawny guy. Whereas really, that does nothing.
Yeah.
It's. I think a lot of men need to have that security within themselves, which comes as part of having a solid mental health, and whether it's because of loneliness, or the factors. I don't know. What do you think about that, Finlay?
There's a couple of points I want to touch on there.
For sure.
Just quickly back to Andrew Tate. When you make he's obviously an insecure man, but when you make a caricature of yourself, right? You portray this Cobra King. If people attack the Cobra King, they're not attacking you. You can hide your own mental health, your own insecurity behind this facade that you put up, behind this character. And I think that's so interesting, because that's how he comes off and so cocky and confident. But it's a character he plays.
For sure.
And no one's attacking the real Andrew Tate. Only he knows the real Andrew Tate. Everyone else knows this character he puts on. So that's one way to save face, to look after yourself whilst being insecure, but giving off this secure vibe. And with the Bradley Martin thing, a lot of UFC fighters already is. I don't know. Like, I love the UFC. I love boxing. A lot of them are probably stupid, but if there's one thing about them, for real, Justin Gaethje, number one example. But if you look at them, they're so self-assured, because they know in any situation, in any physical altercation, like, they're not going to come off on the worst end of that. And that's Bradley Martin going, that's him feeling some insecurity, going, well, I must be, like, I'm this weight, like, I've built this all my life, but these guys have worked on a different skill set their whole life. So they're coming into these situations confident. They're laughing it off because they don't care. They're not going Bradley Martin, we need to fight, like, I need to prove myself. They're maybe going, oh yeah, let's do a sparring round or whatever. but they're not threatened by them.
Yeah.
And isn't that something with coming into this situation with just entirely like self-assuredness, self-confidence that you can only build through like in very intentional means. I think that's something that's really important. I don't know that I've got too much more to say on it just now, but it's impressive. It's important.
There's the idea of being like silent in your confidence.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
not having to prove anything to anyone.
Like just knowing that you've worked on that skill set. It doesn't have to be a physical skill set. It can be like a comedian's good at the craft.
For
a psychologist is the best in the world. Like,
and that's such a blissful sense of security you get from that. Just the ability to know in your own head that you don't have to kind of show and tell everyone else about this. Like you're very comfortable. It's quite a nice thing to have with yourself. I think for me, I've definitely like tackled a lot of insecurities head on, and because of that, I'm very comfortable with it. And there's a lot of things, especially about like the whole bravado thing. That's a very like present thing in my high school, and for me as well. I don't feel the same way anymore. I'm proud that I'm able to sort of have these kind of conversations with my friends. It's a nice feeling. It's not an embarrassing feeling, and I think embarrassment is how I would have felt, 4 years ago talking about this. But it also means that I feel a lot less lonely, which is a subject I really wanted to talk about because, I don't have the statistics on me, but there is so much evidence that shows that men are really fucking lonely right now. And I guess what we've been talking about are the causes of that loneliness. But I guess what's your stance on loneliness in men? Have you experienced it? Do you think it's different?
Just before Finlay goes into this, if I just read this out,
this?
This is suicide rate in Scotland. But just
go and read that.
Just before we go into loneliness, because that's obviously a very much upon linked topics, just suicides. For Scotland, this is from Samaritans. The overall suicide rate was 14 per 100,000 people. Males remain almost 3 times as likely to die by suicide than females, but the female suicide rate has increased since 2017, which is obviously another factor to talk about of just poor mental health globally and different factors, but it's 3 times as likely in males. People living in Scotland's most deprived areas remain more than 3 times more likely to die by suicide than those living in the least deprived areas.
I don't know why, but I told you about this off air, but it definitely reminds me of a conversation I had with my mum. I sort of was asked, like, why are women? Obviously this doesn't account for all women, but I feel like from my perspective, women seem a lot less lonely in certain situations. And I sort of asked my mum that, like, why do you never feel this way? She sort of said, like, when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling upset, I can go to my friends, I can just talk to them, and we can cry it out, we can hug it out, we can watch a movie, get some ice cream, and that's that. And I feel so much better because of it. And sort of her describing how her friends are like this pillar of emotional support for her. Like, she said, I don't think men have that in the same way. And I think that definitely leads to like this kind of loneliness and just not being able to sort of talk with your male friends about this. And we've talked about this before, but I just thought it was such an interesting thing to say that, as like women are just so fucking far ahead of the game when it comes to like emotional intelligence than us. Like we really need to like step our game up and kind of let each other know it's okay that we can sort of talk to each other in this way, and that it's not wrong to do it. In fact, it's very healthy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think loneliness is a huge problem. I feel lonely sometimes. Especially when my girlfriend's busy and I've got no one to talk to about necessarily like how my day's been, aside from just like what I've done.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you're talking to your mates, you're like, oh, like, how's your day been? What'd you get up to?
I did this, I did that. Yeah.
It's not like,
I felt this.
like
yeah,
this.
Yeah, for sure.
And having no one to process your emotions with is just, like, as we said, like, it's just massively unhealthy. You can't bottle that in. And I mean, I wonder, what do you guys think about suicide rates increasing in general? Where's that coming from?
For me, I mean, I think the elephant in the room for me has got to be to social media. I think. I mean, we've had conversations about social media before. Like, you're not on Instagram, and I mean, you've told me your reasons for it, but I think your reasons for it are very interesting. So I think, if you want to sort of expand on that, quite interesting.
Yeah, I actually agree with the social media thing. I think it's the way I look at it is, and I don't base everything off of like this is the way we're designed or whatever. Obviously, because we're talking about social construct and masculinity, but our brains are built a certain way, and a certain way is 3 million years ago you only knew 6 people, and that was the 6 people in your tribe, and that was it. And so,
and you'd marry your sister. Sorry.
And so now we obviously know more people in real life. We go to our lectures, we have our friends, but I struggle to believe that you can keep in close contact with more than 50 people. And if you're doing that, and if you're seeing 200, 300, 400, 500 people on your Instagram doing different things, fun things every day, and you're sat in your bed doing your work, and your mate's on holiday in Spain, and your other friend's got a girlfriend, and your other friend's just got a 6-pack, and it's like, oh my god, what am I doing? Like, constantly comparing yourself to people, it's not healthy, in my opinion. And so,
do you think, ironically, it's done the opposite effect? Like, we are less social now because of social media.
I mean, it's tricky to say. I think that's kind of a buzz phrase. I don't think we're less social. I think it would be because we kind of got social media when we're kind of coming towards adulthood. I don't think it's affected us too much. Look at kids, though. They're on TikTok all the time. I saw this stupid video my friend sent me the other day of children playing outside, and they were just doing TikTok dances with each other. I was like, that's not socializing.
That's crazy.
Like, you're supposed to be running around, like, having play fights, shooting each other with water guns. It's not TikTok dancing with each other.
Yeah.
Like, in silence on your own. Like, that's,
For sure.
that's mental.
I think with social media, and I think you might remember earlier this year, I kind of like went off all social media.
Yeah.
What I found, oh god, that's loud. Sorry to the audience. What I found was my life is now consumed by social media in the sense of well, when Callum and I are at work, yeah, you can use Messenger, Facebook Messenger, and so on about Facebook.
Yeah.
But we need to fill out polls for work.
Yeah.
So we need a Facebook. That's why if you ever saw in the work group, there was a different Tom. That was me. That was just a different account, like my mum's name. Just because I'm one in one, which is like not linked to my actual one. I do improv comedy. I do this show.
Yeah.
We promote using social media.
It's gotta be on social
And,
media.
you know, it's one of those things where I realize, you know, there's on Instagram itself, I have 800 people that follow me. Now, like, you know, it's just, you know, not everyone sees what I do. But if I post a story saying, hey, Blind Mirth are performing tonight. Hey, Let Me Talk is on at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
I will at least have about 200 people seeing that.
Yeah.
And they can then come see it. And it just feels like this responsibility
It's a lot of pressure.
that I've got to, like, because I kind of felt when I went off all social media, I felt better.
Yeah.
But then, like, my own dissertation is linked on the shift. It's about Palestine and looking at the perceptions of conflict. But it's looking at the shift from traditional media to social media. But then I need to be on social media for my dissertation to be able to see that. So it's like this control that it has over us.
It's so tricky because everyone's doing it. You've got to do it.
Every aspect of our life, like, means, like, it's like a necessity for it to be online, just for, like, just to function, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I
which I
don't
think
have
is very
Instagram.
interesting.
I don't have Snapchat. I do have Facebook because I need it. And even without Instagram or Snapchat, I found myself scrolling through Facebook. And I'm like, I don't care what my aunt's friends are doing here. So why am I scrolling?
For
What on earth am I doing?
Yeah.
But it's also so addictive because
It is, yeah.
of the dopamine release you get from the constant scroll. It's like a small hit every time.
It's crazy, honestly. It's absolutely crazy.
Do you remember when we had, so I'm just checking the time for the show, 58. Okay, just going to make sure for the recording as well. Do you remember when we were kids and your families had landlines? Landlines in the house?
Yeah.
Obviously, our parents had you know, the low mobile brick phones. But what I remember is, because obviously I didn't really have access to my mum's phone. Like, I'd play like one or two Snake games or something on it if I was bored in the car. But, like, I didn't have access to a phone and the text messages received, even though they were very small text messages. And we get home and we click on the landline. It's like, you have 5 messages.
Yeah.
Playing from playing message number 1. hey guys, how you doing? Trying to come by today. And it's like you don't know what people have said to you till the end of the day.
Mhm.
You know, it's obviously I'm not bashing smartphones and instant communication. That's good, but I was thinking, you know, having that sort of like that fixed contact point.
Mhm.
I feel people might have been a bit happier then because they would, you know, if you wanted to go out and see someone, you go out in the street
Yeah.
and chat to them.
Yeah.
We do have to maybe wrap it up and have a part 2 with Finlay.
Yeah, I'd like that a lot.
Yeah, no, it's been really fun. I think for me, I'm so glad I didn't look at the notes.
Yeah,
I'm so glad because I think the conversation ran very smoothly
Yeah, naturally.
than it has done before. So yeah, thank you, Finlay, for being such a great guest.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, we've had a lot of insight.
Yeah.
No, it's been great talking to you.
I feel like there's a lot still left to be said, right?
For sure.
It's one of these
For sure,
topics
yeah.
that seems to go on forever, but I
Yeah.
don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that we've covered some important topics.
Mhm.
Maybe not in the best of detail, but we have an hour, and it's been a good conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
And as always, the episodes will be up on all podcast platforms. That's your Spotify's, that's your Apple Podcasts, your Amazon Podcasts, I guess. I think RSS covers that as well. And now there is a Let Me Talk YouTube channel.
Let's go.
We don't yet have video footage. There's only audio of the podcast. And by the time Reading Week comes along, I'm going to be uploading clips
Cool.
to that channel. But check that out if you're looking for YouTube. And then we're hoping to have a video in the future. So maybe next time,
Amazing.
part 2,
Fingers
you get
crossed.
to see Finlay's incredibly. By the way, this is a model. Callum and Finlay. I dressed them for a catwalk. These are models, by the way. So keep a lookout for that. Shall I give a little outro then? Yeah, it's been Let Me Talk. We're with Finlay. Thank you everyone for listening. It's now 11 p.m. It's time to say goodbye to Jamiroquai's Can Heat. Have a good night and have a great week. See you next Monday.